A project led by President Jimmy Carter, a Habitat for Humanity demonstration site where in 1 week's time the Habitat for Humanity group brought in about 1,000 volunteers and built 20 houses. These houses have been sold to poor people who were carefully recruited and selected from around the city at no profit and no interest. And the local project coordinator of Habitat for Humanity is with us, and if there are any of you who would like to take a quick ride out there after the press conference, we'd be glad to provide transportation. The city prepared the site and put the water and sewage facilities in, and then sold the site to Habitat for a low bid, which was very insignificant, maybe $100 a lot or something like that. But we saw this as an opportunity to develop low-income housing. Over 2/3 of the materials and all of the labor was donated. And as a result of this, we have an active Habitat for Humanity housing movement that's going to continue working every Saturday under the leadership of John Whelan Homes and Habitat. As one who went out to the site on a Monday morning at 7 o'clock in the morning and saw nothing, and I was able to work with them about a half a day. But when I came back that evening, the roof was already on, and the house was totally framed. And by Friday, people were moving in. And it was really a modern miracle made possible by the generosity and energy of Habitat for Humanity locally and nationally. Let me also say that city services after the convention, as of 12 o'clock Friday, all streets will be open. MARTA will resume normal operations Friday morning, and at the Omni station will open Friday morning. The airport operations will continue, and there has been no disruption or interruption of airport services. The sanitation services have gone on throughout the week without disruption, and I've been very pleased at the way the sanitation crews have come in at night after the delegates have gone home and swept and washed down the streets. We've had 24-hour crews. They've done very, very well. And I think that's basically all of the new changes. I also have to apologize to the AIDS AIDS Coalition to unleash power, because I didn't understand what that was and what that meant. And one of the problems around the incidents on Monday and Tuesday was a mixture of several groups. I made the association between ACT UP and the No Business as Usual group and the skinheads that have been deliberately courting arrest and violence and that had acted hostilely toward the police on other occasions. And in my answer to the question yesterday, I really was talking about actions that I have since seen on the tape did not come from the AIDS Coalition to Unleash Power, but came from other groups that were doing things that were provocative toward the police. And I extend to you my apology and to say that in the whole movement, to reaffirm what I said yesterday, that in the whole movement that is attempting to get our city and our nation to understand that in relationship to AIDS, silence equals death, that's something that all of us can and should support. And I'm sorry that I confuse the issues by involving it with other activities that have been going on in the city. I don't know where we are, but I'm very glad to answer questions. I think we got a nominee, and to me that means we're going to have a president. If you will go to the microphones, there are 4 here, and speak into the microphones and state your name and your...
Mayor.
Yes.
Mayor Young, Ed Hauber from PCTV in Pittsburgh. Sir, how do you respond to the sharp criticism concerning last night's Omni Center lockout, considering that it happened once again?
Well, let me say that it is confirming what I felt all along, that what we really need in this city is a dome stadium. And a dome stadium adjacent to that World Congress Center complex would have resolved these problems. But in my involvement with the Democratic National Committee and our fire marshal, we reached a determination that it really wasn't in the interest of the convention or in the interest of the delegates to have the halls and the aisles and the entire group jam-packed with people. I understand that there was an additional problem of some phony passes, but even so, I think we'd have a problem. We've had to give out, we have a capacity that we can accommodate maybe 15,000 people all together in the Omni. And we probably have given out many more passes than that. But we have had another 20,000 people over across the street in the Georgia World Congress Center. And frankly, I could not get in last night. And I enjoyed listening to the nomination speech by Governor Clinton sitting over in the Georgia World Congress Center. And it's the best we could do. But we knew that that would be the case. We also knew, though, that any other city we went to as a Democratic National Convention, any other city would have the same problems when you took approximately a third of the space in the hall and the arena and allotted it to television.
Secondly, do you feel, in light of that, that this convention overall and for the city was a big success?
Well, I have been really pleased. I'm not ready to declare it a total success yet because we've got one more day. But I have been very pleased with the way everything has gone. I've been especially pleased at the way the citizens have responded to the difficulty. I get nothing but good reports from the delegates who say to me that they are being treated very well and very courteously in our hotels and the taxis by people on the street. I even heard a story of a lady who said she left her wallet in her pocketbook in the restroom, and she went to 3 people, and nobody knew what to do about it, but each person took her to somebody else who took her a little closer, and in about 2 hours she found her pocketbook returned intact with nothing missing. I'm glad that not only testifies to the honesty and efficiency of people in the city of Atlanta, but that Democrats can be trusted. And so I feel pretty good. We've had some problems, and I don't want to gloss over those. But given the demands that have been put on this city by this convention, and the scrutiny of some 15,000 of your media colleagues, I think you've done very well, and I think we've done as well as I hope we could do.
Mayor Young, my name is Rex Walkner from Chicago Outlines and the New York Native. I'd like to ask another question, if I could, about the relationship between ACT UP and the local police. If you'll recall, on Monday when that clash occurred, ACT UP was simply trying to walk on a sidewalk in front of the Omni. Yesterday, ACT UP and some openly gay and lesbian delegates and some openly gay and lesbian elected officials from around the country and the leaders, some leaders from the national gay and lesbian movement, went back and tried to walk on that sidewalk again, and again they were prevented from walking on the sidewalk by about 100 riot-clad police. Is there any particular reason that this organization is prohibited from walking on the sidewalk when other people seem to be passing quite freely?
Well, I think that there was a court case that was filed before the convention occurred, and one of the issues that was raised was the ability of the police to keep that Marietta Street corridor open. And I think the courts decided in our favor that we did have the right and the responsibility to keep that corridor open. Now, in the tape that I saw, the officer asked the group to clear the sidewalk and to move into the demonstration area. And it was then that the pushing and shoving occurred. But I think that it's something you can argue. But I think the police feel like the federal courts gave them the right to keep that corridor open. Now, whether you were blocking that corridor or interfering in any way, I think is questionable. But insofar as it was a demonstration, and insofar as the courts ordered the demonstrations to be in that consigned area, we would really appreciate it if you tried to do that in the consigned area.
I was not asking about the clash that occurred on Monday, but rather about a repeat yesterday where the same group of people, only accompanied by some gay and lesbian leaders, returned and were prohibited a block further away, actually, from walking on, not from blocking the street that needs to be open for buses, if I understand correctly. It's the street that leads up to the CNN Center, which the police captain said was open to the public if you wanted to go in there and eat or something, he said.
Yeah.
But this group, the police, I think, it appears, are overly sensitive to the silence equals death emblem, and people who were wearing that or were associated with that group were literally prohibited from walking on a public sidewalk again on yesterday. And when I'm just trying to understand, why this is happening.
Yeah, I don't know, and I'll be glad to raise the question with the police, and I think you should also. But I think it would be important to try to have some understanding in advance with Major Holly about what you're doing, why you're doing it, and your argument for the right to do that.
I interviewed Major Holly yesterday on the street, actually, and he said that anybody could walk on that sidewalk, and yet when this group tries to, they are stopped by 100 riot-clad police came running right up to them.
Were they walking, or did they? Well, I don't know. I looked at the tape, and what I saw was 150, 100 riot-clad police that moved at half step.
That's Monday that you're talking about.
Yeah,
Okay.
to move people back. But I didn't see anybody swinging any clubs, and the group was moved back to Walton Street and then returned, and was then moved back again. And I think that if you feel as though you have a right and a need to do this, I think it would be effective to try to negotiate some understanding with the police before and try to see if you can make some agreement with them.
Thank you.
Hello? Harold Moore, Portland, Oregon, the Gay and Lesbian Press, just out. I have two questions, Your Honor. The first is, after this convention is over and the gay and lesbian press from around the country leave, are you going to guarantee their safety? I know that you signed a gay and lesbian rights ordinance during your administration, but are you going to actively seek enforcement of that ordinance?
Well, we do. We have a gay and lesbian task force that meets regularly with the police community. There is a liaison committee. There are persons who are on the civilian review board that I appointed who are openly gay and who have been actively involved in working with the police. There is a continued training in every one of our training sessions in terms of sensitivity to the protection of all citizens' rights. And if there are any other suggestions, I have enjoyed my conversations with the attorney for the delegation, and I have received her card and given her mine, and I have suggested that anytime she feels as though there's anything that I need to be aware of or sensitized to, don't hesitate to call me. I think that we're laboring this issue for a long time, but we have really tried. And we've tried over a period, not just in this administration, but in the previous administration, and with 2 police commissioners over 20 years. Almost. And I think that we're beginning to get some understanding and sensitivity to the kinds of questions which you raise. And that doesn't mean that we've solved all the problems any more than we've solved all the race problems or economic problems or any other problem. But we're not trying to hide problems, and we're willing to work with any group to ensure that their constitutional rights, civil rights, and human rights are protected by our city.
So you can assure me that in your mind, gay and lesbian people have full human rights, full civil rights, full constitutional rights in the city of Atlanta?
In my mind. Now, I would say the same thing is true of all black citizens, but that doesn't mean that we don't have incidents of racism or incidents where an emotional situation exacerbates racial tension. What we say is, when those things occur, we do our best to deal with them in a rational, logical, civil way.
One other question.
Can you let me get somebody else? This is getting to be almost a...
Bill Haskell?
Yeah, yes.
Bill Haskell, Windy City Times. My question, Mary Young, is that you're a disciple of Martin Luther King in the struggle for civil rights. Most effective tool was nonviolent civil disobedience. Will you permit further acts of civil disobedience with ACT UP in the city of Atlanta?
Well, but when I committed civil disobedience, I did so knowing full well that I would be arrested, and I was prepared to accept the arrest and challenge the arrest in a court of law. In almost every instance, in fact, I think in every single instance in which I was involved, the federal courts upheld what I did. And it was never just civil disobedience for civil disobedience sake. It was a part of an educational campaign to try to help the American public to learn to relate to citizens who were different. And I don't have any problem with that.
Well, that is also ACT UP's purpose, and we would like to return to the original site on Monday and complete our kiss-in. Will you permit it?
I won't. I mean, I certainly won't stop it. I'm going to be asleep Monday. And there will
no, we want to go back now, today or tomorrow.
Well, first place, I think those are things that are handled by the police commissioner And I think you can apply for a permit. You can talk with them, as I suggested to the other gentleman, you know, you're free to do what you want to do. But as I said, that if there is a misunderstanding, and if the police officers are interpreting a federal court order one way and you're interpreting it another, I think that you have to be prepared for a confrontation unless that discussion is resolved. Yes.
Michael Siptros, Seattle Gay News. Briefly, could you tell us what services the City of Seattle, the City of Atlanta provides for people with AIDS and also AIDS prevention education?
I really can't give you a full survey of that, but I'm sure we can. Somebody in the city can.
Okay, thank you.
Diana West, Washington Times. I just wanted to know what advice you're going to be passing on to your colleague in New Orleans.
Well, I talked with Mayor Bartholomew yesterday, and I told him I thought he wouldn't have any problem, because the big problem with the demonstration is to get the city, I mean not the demonstration, but the convention, is to get the city to accept it as a good thing. And New Orleans is a great city for a party. And they love Mardi Gras, and they love parades, and I mean, and when it comes to eating and drinking and partying, they can outdo Atlanta. And I think that they might even warm up some Republicans. But I would, you know, I don't know the extent to which demonstrators will go to New Orleans. And we frankly didn't discuss that. But I think you find that the New Orleans police are a little different from us. I don't think they've had quite as much, well, I shouldn't make a judgment. I would talk with them very carefully if I were going to New Orleans to demonstrate.
Mr. Young.
Yes.
As a mayor, here you have a foreign correspondent, Artur Blinov from Izvestia.
Can you give me your name? I didn't hear.
Artur Blinov from Izvestia newspaper, USSR. Mr. Mayor, as a mayor of a big American city, what changes would you like to see in the policies of administration?
I would like to see the federal government understand that cities are the life of a nation, and that once again some of the resources of the federal government be related to the whole question of domestic tranquility and promoting the general welfare. That our nation right now is more seriously threatened by drugs and crime than we are, for instance, by your country at this moment. That there is an accord and an understanding that has been introduced by your General Secretary and agreed upon with President Reagan, that should bring a relaxation of tension and a continuation of the disarmament process. But because of the 50 years almost of heavy military spending, the resources of both of our nations have been drawn away from the needs of citizens and cities. And so I think we really do need to have much more emphasis placed on housing. And in our country, we would put the emphasis on home ownership for poor people. And I think Habitat for Humanity has demonstrated that that's possible, and that when people own their own home, they take better care of it. There's a sense of pride, and there's a sense of something almost spiritual happens in a family when it becomes a homeowner. And so I would say that crime, home ownership, and mass transportation are things that the next administration should focus on that would make our cities more livable. And we fortunately are doing, I think, fairly well with mass transportation. And I don't think the crime problem has gotten out of hand in this city. But we could certainly use some help on drugs, and we could certainly use some help on low and moderate income housing. In fact, we could use some help on all economic levels of housing.
Thank you.
Let me
Mr.
see.
Mayor?
Yes.
Jan Gross from WWL-TV in New Orleans. And we're looking forward to another convention here coming up. And we want to know how Atlanta is making out economically in all this.
Well, Atlanta is doing very well, but it's the caterers and not the restaurants. I think there's so much free food around that the restaurants aren't doing the business that they might do. Also, our conventions have been starting early and running late, so that people are not eating at the dinner hour. And if I could make a suggestion, it would be that, and if we could do it all over, I think we would advertise, instead of breakfast, lunch, and dinner as we normally do, at a convention like this, I would put the emphasis on brunches between 10 and 3 and 4. And because I think those are the times that people are going to be doing most of their serious eating. Of course, New Orleans restaurants have a kind of reputation that will draw a certain clientele, and the Republican convention will probably be a lot duller than ours. So, and they got a lot more money. So maybe you fare better than we did. But that was one of the complaints we heard in San Francisco also, and also in Dallas, that the restaurants didn't do the business, but the caterers. And I mean, you'd stumble over parties all over town, I think, and the people who are in telecommunications, they are going to make a whole lot of money.
Will the city of Atlanta make money?
Yeah, we will, and but I talked to Coleman Young, who says that Detroit is still receiving benefits from having hosted the Republican convention, was that 8 years ago? And he said they are still receiving direct benefits, people coming in to do business, to invest, and things that go back to the Republican convention that was there 8 years ago. So I think we're going to find that a convention is a good thing for this city. We have received, I think, hundreds of millions of dollars of free publicity all around the world. And thanks to most of you, it's been overwhelmingly good. And even the criticism has not been bad, I mean, or unjustified. I think I heard one or two things that I could quarrel with, but for the most part, we were not making any impression of trying to, say that we were the perfect city. We say we're a city with all the problems that any other city has. We've been trying to work on them. Thank you.
So I'm Victor Calderon from Mexico City, Stereo radio station. I want to ask you about the results of the convention that finishes today. We've been talking to some of the delegates that were here to support Reverend Jackson, and they don't seem to be very happy with the turnout, even though there's formal unity and support for Governor Dukakis. Many of them are saying that they're not going to vote for him because their needs are not being taken care of. How do you feel about that? Is there a division in the grassroots of the party?
Well, no. I think what we're experiencing now is a kind of emotional letdown, and it always takes a time. We had some of the same problems in every convention, and when we left Atlantic City in 1964, people were not very enthusiastic about Lyndon Johnson. because they were absorbed in the struggle of the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party. But by the time the election came around, they swept Lyndon Johnson into office by a landslide. But let me say that more important even than the concerns of the black vote right now, and more significant in this election, is something else that you see in the state of Georgia for the first time in my lifetime. And that is, you see the governor, you see both senators, you see the speaker and the General Assembly of the state legislature, you see 8 of the 10 members of the congressional district, and every mayor of every major city in Georgia totally endorsing this ticket. We have never seen that. Oh, also I heard yesterday, that the courthouse crowd, that county officials around Georgia are enthusiastic about a Dukakis Benson ticket. If that happens, and if that continues, I don't think there's any question that we will carry Georgia by a landslide. I hear the same things from Louisiana, from Mississippi, from Arkansas. And the only 2 states that I'm worried about in the South are Florida and Tennessee. And Tennessee only if Lamar Alexander's on the ticket. But I think that I was with the Commissioner of Agriculture from North Carolina yesterday at the big agriculture party. People are more optimistic and more ready to work for this ticket, a broader base of Democrats. And the black vote is decisive. I'm not trying to underestimate that, but it's been 1961 since the black vote has proved decisive. And that was in the election of John Kennedy. That's when people discovered the black vote. And when the last-minute votes in Chicago swung the election. But in 1964, it wasn't the black vote. Johnson swept everybody. In 1976, the black vote was significant because it made President Carter acceptable to the North and to the liberal wing of the party, but it was really not the decisive factor in President Carter's election. And I think in some sense it's been a mistake to put so much emphasis in the media on the black vote. We're 10%. And even if everybody black votes, it doesn't necessarily impact on the election unless other factors. And the only reason I'm saying this, and it's not to diminish the importance of the black vote, but simply it's to say that the real story of this convention has not yet been told. And the story of this convention is probably as much the reaction of Al Gore, of Dick Gephardt, of Paul Simon. If we're going to win this election, we're going to have to carry not only the black vote, we're going to have to carry the South, we're going to have to carry the Midwest, and the big industrial states of the East, and possibly California. We can't lose California, Washington, Oregon, and Colorado. We've got to win about 2 of those 4 states, and in none of those states is the black vote particularly significant.
Thank you very much.
Joe Frazier with the Associated Press. Putting necessary security precautions aside, was the city prepared for a worse time than it got, both for demonstrators that knew were coming and for those who perhaps didn't wish the convention well?
We were.
Were you expecting a worse time than you got?
No, but we were prepared for the worst. And I think that the overwhelming majority of our law enforcement presence has remained unutilized. But they've been around, and they would have been available if necessary. You have to remember, we were prepared for the worst, and we didn't know what could happen. Mm-hmm.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'm Jim Galloway with the Journal-Constitution here in Atlanta. given that we can't build a Georgia Dome by tonight, is there any kind of planning being done between the Fire Marshal's office and the DNC to make sure that at least delegates get into the Omni, say perhaps closing the Omni early before it's quite filled and then just allowing delegates to go through?
I have not been in on those discussions. We did have a separate media door so that members of the media who were required to be there could get there, and I will check with the plans to see what occurs, but it's going to still be a problem.
Mayor Young, I'm Susan Warren from the Houston Chronicle. This is going to be another kind of advice question. There's already people around wearing stickers saying Houston in '92. And you mentioned before that there have been some problems, you have made some mistakes, you're not perfect. With the benefit of hindsight, would you have some advice for Houston convention planners if we were to get the convention then?
Well, I'm sure I would be meeting with your mayor, and I'm sure that even I probably won't be mayor, certainly will not be mayor by then, but I'm sure that the city of Atlanta would be as responsive to the officials in Houston as New York and San Francisco, Detroit, and Dallas were to us. We got a lot of advice and a lot of help. We spent a lot of time 2 years out talking with officials in each of those cities. And at first, I thought it was just an excuse for my staff to travel around to San Francisco and New York and the like. And I wasn't that enthusiastic about it until I began to see that, well, San Francisco, for instance, shared with us a briefing book about that thick of things that they had done that they suggested to us. And it was very, very valuable. So I'm sure we would be willing and anxious to work with you.
But do you know right now what some of that advice might involve as far as the mistakes you may have made here?
Well, I think that in Houston, we would probably be using the Astrodome. And I think that would be the only advice, that as nice as the new convention center is, it's not as big as the Georgia World Congress Center. And I would think that if in 4 years we have seen the number of satellite television hookups go from 3 or 4 to 115 or 20, that what might happen in the next 4 years is certainly going to make the convention more of an electronic spectacle. And so the Astrodome would not be too large. You could use, a third of the Astrodome and still have a lot of space. And I mean, if I wouldn't expect them to take my advice, but if asked, I would say look to the Astrodome rather than to even the new convention center for something like this.
Mayor, are you ducking personal appearances in Atlanta this week with Lenora B. Fulani?
Yeah.
Can you tell me why that is?
Yeah, because I was advised, one, when Lenora Fulani, who's a very charming and gracious young woman, asked me if I would issue a proclamation. I said, sure. And she said, would you come by and deliver it? And I said, I'd be glad to try to do that. But the conduct of some of the people associated with that group, I felt would, if it occurred in the demonstration area while I was there, that I was running the risk of an overreaction by my police. And I thought that rather than be a cause for some kind of conflict, that I would send the proclamation and stay away. But I didn't have any problem with the group. I don't think, well, what they said they were interested in, open registration, same-day registration, opening up the political process, is one of the platform planks and one of the things that is already committed to in the Democratic Party. And all I would have done was to go there and say that. But the purpose of my going would have been to try to get, to establish some communication and to make them seem welcome. The proclamation did that. But I think that among some of those groups, and I'm not saying that this is true of Dr. Fulani, but among some of those groups, the purpose has been to get attention and to create a counter convention that would draw attention away from the Democratic Convention and create more incidents and confusion in the street, so that people would be looking at the streets rather than at the hall. I didn't think that was in the interest of the Democratic Convention, and I thought if something like that occurred, it would be bad for the city and it wouldn't help their cause either.
So you do equate independent political action and movements with confusion in the streets? Is that what you
Yeah,
said?
particularly when it's deliberately disruptive and hostile and violent.
And the Fulani people are those things?
Some of the people in that group
Can you be
were
more,
just plain crazy.
can you be more specific?
No, I can't. I mean, look, I did 20 years of demonstrations. There's no demonstration that I've ever been in where you didn't have a neurotic, psychotic potential. We worked very hard to control that, and I didn't see the control mechanism there, and so I think you had crazies on the loose, and I didn't think it was good to encourage it. I didn't think that was democracy. I thought it was insanity.
Are the same people who briefed you about what ACT UP was before you knew the same people that are briefing you on what the Fulani campaign are all about?
No, they're not. I mean, almost everybody in the City Hall has been involved in demonstrations. We have demonstrations every day. We have them in City Hall, in here, in my office. I mean, we don't have any problem with demonstrations. We do have problems with violence. We have problems with psychotic people. And I don't think there's any way that when you have a big gathering, if you don't make some effort to control it, and we had clear evidence Sunday, before the convention started, that there was a violent and psychotic potential here that we could not let get out of hand. And I knock on wood and thank God we have not. But that still doesn't, I frankly think that that interfered with the success of many of the demonstrations. Because most of the people in this Democratic Party are very sympathetic to many of the causes that are being raised by the demonstrators. And given the kind of arena that we established, and the concept that we had in the beginning was a concept where delegates of the Democratic Convention would participate with the demonstrators, and that it would be, it would be an attempt to send a message to the party and to the nation around certain issues. Now, in some ways, the Jackson campaign brought most of those causes into the convention, and most of those just causes were expressed very eloquently on national television. And given the process, given the fact that the party has been able to open up to give expression within the party to so many of these voices, it has really left on the outside people who are more and more desperate to do something to get attention for something, and it's a little out of control. But almost every voice that I have heard from the demonstrators, you can also hear inside the convention in some way. Yes.
Mayor Young, just to return briefly but gently to the subject of lesbian and gay rights. It's my understanding that since 1984, all new recruits to the police office or the police department have undergone sensitivity training on matters of lesbian and gay concerns. Are you, first off, let me say I think that's wonderful, and I think that a lot of other major cities should follow your example. When do you expect that you'll be doing that for the upper echelon officers, the sergeants and above?
I think that goes on for sergeants and above anyway. And we do have a mandatory retraining that people go through at least once a year. And there has been a lot of discussion at the command level. After all, this came from the top. This didn't really come from me. It came out of a dialogue with the Gay Lesbian Task Force meeting with the police on a regular basis. And it started, I think it probably even started before 1984 in some sense, under Commissioner Lee Brown, who came here from San Francisco. And it occurred in part because one of our big problems in the 70s was people coming in from rural areas and suburbs being involved in gay bashing. And we had to get the police, one, sensitized to the way the problem works, and we began to work with the police force in an effort to protect members of the gay community. And it was, I mean, there's been a long working relationship that, while it's not without its tensions and its problems, it does exist, and it has been quite effective in dealing with any problem that we designate, that we're able to define.
Mr. Mayor, Jim Lynn with Columbus Ledger and Inquirer. Do you think, being Democrats, that the Democrats are as unified as they say they are? And what do you think, what types of things need to be done to get the rank and file Jackson supporters behind this ticket?
Well, I think the Democrats are as unified as we say we are. And we're unified from the courthouse to the governor's mansion. Now, that's the kind of unity that wins elections. When you talk about when you define Democrats politically, Democrats who have won election from the courthouse to the governor's mansion support this ticket. That means that people who are now Jackson supporters, or even if they were people who were not involved in the process, the active voters of the state support the ticket. To the extent that the Jackson supporters are new voters, I think they will be caught up in the spirit of what's going on here in Georgia. The gentleman who was the chair of the Jackson delegation has got to run for re-election for the Senate in 1988. Whether they're a little enthusiastic about Dukakis or not, he's going to get those supporters out to support him. And of the 6 to 7,000 black elected officials in this country, 96% or so of them are Democrats. So their running for office is going to be, and they're running for office supporting the Democratic ticket. That is going to get people out to vote.
Speaking of Senator Walker, State Senator Walker.
That's right, State Senator Walker. Yes, I'm sorry.
Patty Mowry from PPC TV in Pittsburgh. In what way, if any, are you going to help contribute to Dukakis' campaign between now and the election?
Well, I would do anything that Michael Dukakis asked me to do, and I'm going to do lots of things that he doesn't ask me to do, because President Carter asked me to work with him in 2 states. And at that time, I was in the Congress, and in response to members of Congress and in response to places that I knew he needed help, I just went at my own expense or at the expense of my congressional colleagues. And when we got through and counted up, we had worked in 41 states. And I think that we're going to work with this ticket wherever we can, and in any way we can. Now, I won't be able to get around as much as mayor as I could as congressman, but in a way it's easier to get around from Atlanta. What I've been able to do in Atlanta is put in a full day's work here at City Hall, catch a 5 o'clock plane somewhere, campaign half the night, and be back at work in the morning. And our transportation system is good enough so that you can go to 80% of the United States and get back the same day. And so I will be doing lots of things, but most of all, we'll be getting out a big vote in Georgia.
David Harenko, PPC TV in Pittsburgh. I was wondering, do you think the Dukakis-Benson ticket is successfully contributing to the war on drugs issue?
Well, I think the Dukakis-Benson ticket is just getting itself together. But I think that that's one of the concerns that Jesse Jackson has brought to the nation. I said to Senator Gore, that's been one of the concerns that Mrs. Gore has had, that if he had listened to his wife's advice, rather than some of the pollsters that had him campaigning as a hardliner on defense, you know, that it was clear that the issues that the American people were concerned about were more domestic this time. And drugs are a greater threat than Nicaragua, you know, or almost anything else. And I think that the success of the Jackson campaign in a very simple thing: stop drugs, keep jobs, and invest in your children. Those are three things that I think a Dukakis-Benson administration will have to be committed to, not because of Jesse Jackson only, but because the American people are definitely concerned about those issues.
I'm Pedro Enrique Armendariz from Radio Educación in Mexico City, and as Latin American, I'm very interested in U.S. relations with the Third World. It was a very welcome change for us to see the positions that Governor Dukakis was sustaining. But now he has chosen a vice president that has very different positions. For instance, in regards to aid to Savimbi, aid to the Contras, the senators' positions are very close to the Republicans. What do you think is going to happen if the American people are more interested in economic issues? What's going to happen, for instance, when there's another vote in Congress regarding military aid to Nicaragua?
Well, I think what you're going to have in foreign policy, and I have not had any conversations with people, but what I have sensed is on every world issue, you're going to have almost a halt and a reassessment. This administration, you know the story of the fellow who's playing third base, and after 3 or 4 errors, they put in another guy, and he made an error. And he said, golly, you messed up third base so bad, nobody can play it. Well, they've messed up foreign policy so that it would be very, very bad to go in to try to do to modify what they have been doing. That what I think we're going to have to do with everything except U.S.-Soviet relations, which is basically, you know, the democratic agenda that Schultz has brought around. I think we're going to have to stop and have a reassessment. Now, in Central America, we will probably start with the Arias plan. But clearly, we have more question and concern about Mexico than we do about Nicaragua. And the clear threat to everybody's security and stability in Central America is the political and economic development of Mexico. So I would like to see us have a policy that was toward toward Central America, that was based more on a relationship with Mexico than on a conflict with Nicaragua. That would mean, one, it would be, first of all, more economic than military. I think you're going to find that it's nothing short of revolutionary that the president can speak the language. having been frustrated all my diplomatic career dealing through interpreters and not being able to fluently speak any other language, but knowing enough here and there, I even catch interpreters saying things that I didn't say. And to have a president that can stand and look a president of Mexico and talk to them person to person will revolutionize democracy in Central America.
Regarding the specific differences in their positions, again, towards Savimbi and Nicaragua, do you expect the senator to change his approach or not to mention it, or what is going to happen there?
I think that insofar as a senator has legitimate concerns, what happened in the Carter administration was that when the Cabinet or National Security Council met, everybody expressed their views, but it was the president's decision. It was not a majority vote. And I don't think that Senator Benson is any more convinced of the rightness of his views than Governor Dukakis is of the rightness of his views. But all of those situations are changing. And given the fact that there could be some alternatives, it's not just voting up or down a Republican program. And coming from a state like Texas, even when you disagree with the administration, there's a tendency to say that the patriotic thing to do is to give the president the chance and the support. I think that same sense of patriotism and that same sense of loyalty would much more easily be transferred to Governor Dukakis.
Mayor Young, I'm Vivian Shapiro from Gay Cable Network. Firstly, I'd like to thank you for taking the time to investigate the incident of Monday and coming here today and apologize. I think that's very meaningful to all of us. Secondly, by and large, I had found that the city has been totally courteous to the gay and lesbian community in every aspect except for that incident. But something's been bothering me, and I wanted to ask you and address this. The Justice Department recently issued a report stating that bias-related violence is perpetrated against gays and lesbians more often than any other group, even than blacks in the United States. In your press conference yesterday, and in an implication today when you were talking about emotional exasperation brings about racism, in reference to the police, you suggested that you thought an added factor might be homophobia. Do you think police actions as such should be categorized as part of bias-related violence?
Yes, I do. And I think that we accept that as a problem with which we have to work. And
I don't think it's unique to Atlanta. I
No.
mean, people are being beaten up going out of bars by the police at all times. But I don't think the Justice
Let me
Department
say
attributes
that-
any, counts that in bias-related violence.
No, I think that we would treat that as bias-related violence, and one of the reasons for a relationship between a gay-lesbian task force and the police hierarchy is to sensitize the community and the police force to that kind of violence. It's also kind of related to the whole category of domestic violence. That's one of the largest units we have in our police force, one of the most active units we have. And we're trying to gear more of our law enforcement activities toward prevention. And that's one of the reasons for trying to train and prepare our police force and our community to deal with these issues.
Are there open gays and lesbians on your police force now?
I'm sure there are. Yes, there are. In fact, one of the things that we've suffered criticism for is that we have had ads in gay periodicals that have said that we do not discriminate and that sexual orientation is not in fact, we have actively recruited people who are likely to be more sensitive and representative of the problems of the gay community to be a part of law enforcement.
Thank you very much.
I think we'll take this one question, and we're running over. Forgive me.
Mayor Young, it's a pleasure to meet you today. My name is Sylvia Ayers. I am a national delegate to the convention from Houston, Texas. I am a member of the NAACP in Houston. I'm also a open supporter of gay and lesbian rights. I was involved as a demonstrator in the Kiss Act Up, Kiss In. I was very offended, not at the demonstrators, but by the police authority. That's what I was offended by, because I'm being of the Jewish faith, I'm accustomed to seeing women kiss women, men kiss men, because that's how Greeks and Italians and people do. But to see a group of policemen in riot gear reminded me of the Nazis in Nazi Germany. I also was involved in the march downtown, where the janitors who were only making $3.30 an hour were marching. I didn't see anybody in riot gear down there trying to push them on down the street. And the way they did it, you've seen the goose steps, pardon me, Mayor.
Yeah.
But I want to tell you, I don't believe that you would have permitted that had you known about it. Because I don't think they were doing anything that was wrong. I think would have offended you about the police. And I want to tell you, I'm proud of your city. I think this rail system is magnificent.
Thank you.
And
I wish we
thank
could
you
take
for the opportunity of being here.
I hope we can get you all in Houston to do the same. Thank you very much, and we'll see you no more. Do we have it tomorrow? Oh, I'm sorry. Tomorrow we have a wrap-up. But have a good final day of the convention.
Mr. Mayor, we have transportation out front returning to the World Congress Center if anyone would like to take it.
We have transportation to the World Congress Center, and also if there's anybody that would like to go by the Habitat for Humanity project, we have transportation for you there also. One of those bus vans could go that way.